The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Welcome to our show on public safety. Our view on public safety is a continuation of fire prevention. We're going to speak about fire prevention once again. And once again, I have Chief Ronald Sevigny, Deputy Chief Sevigny, and Inspector Jeff Medeiros with us today. We talked about numerous stuff on the other show, but today we're going to talk about solar panels on houses. And I think Inspector Medeiros is the expert on that stuff.
I work in collaboration with the building department. Pretty much the code comes under the building department, but there is a piece that comes under the fire code as well, as far as access. Solar is a great power source, but we do have issues with it because in the event of a fire, one of the things that we do is vent the building. So we always want to make sure that the distances provided in the code are met. And we end up having some issues with that every once in a while because obviously you want the most bang for your buck when it comes to solar panels. So sometimes we find that the distances, as far as separation distances, giving us access to the roof, sometimes get a little bit tight. So that's really the biggest thing that we're watching for when it comes to solar, is that we do have the accessibility on the roof in the event of a fire. Because what a lot of people, I'm not sure if you do or don't know, is with solar, we're dealing with direct current, DC. And it's the DC that can really give you a really bad shock. So it's very important that we have those distances while accessing the roof in the event if we need to open up the roof to ventilate the building.
So for the homeowner's sake, if they have a fire on their solar panel, I think we had one up there, Current Road one time on the roof of an industrial building.
Absolutely.
Black smoke was emanating. It looked like a real major situation. A homeowner should not take a garden hose and throw water on it, because they may lose their hair like us.
Yeah, that's definite. Leave that stuff leave that to the professional firefighters, because I mean, in some cases, the thing with solar and solar panels is that up until you get to the inverter, yes, you can shut off the inverter, which is going to kill the power from that point on within the system. But those solar panels basically stay live and continue to generate electricity even during a fire. So there are certain ways to handle them. If some of the solar companies suggest that you put a cover over them, very similar to what we were speaking of earlier. And but that's really the main concern, that even though there's a fire ongoing, those solar cells, as long as they're exposed to light, are still generating power. So definitely a concern with us. And
like you mentioned, it compromises the fire department. If you have a fire in the particular residence, you have to open up the roofs to vent it. And if the fire is either the back or the front, so that could be a challenge as well for the firefighters.
Oh, definitely, which is why when this whole thing starts, during the permit process, when the solar companies come, they need to provide a drawing to the building department and the fire department showing accessibility to the ridge and also the access ways on that roof to make sure that they're meeting the standard and the code in the event that we need to breach the roof at some point in order to ventilate.
Yeah, it's a challenge for everyone.
Absolutely.
Moving on to smoke detectors. I mean, and CO detectors. I know we've been to situations where we go to a fire and the people have the batteries out of their smoke detector, and it's a bad thing to do. Let's go back 25, 30 years ago. A pan on the stove became a kitchen fire. Explain, Chief Sevigny, yourself, What has smoke detectors and CO detectors have done for the public to save homes and lives?
Well, besides sprinkling systems are the number one extinguishing agent for fires, for residential fires, for business fires. So obviously not all homes have sprinkler systems. That's something that we'd like to advance. We'd love to see more sprinkler systems. However, it is quite expensive. But in the meantime, the importance of smoke detectors cannot be minimized whatsoever or overlooked, because that is your number one alerting agent. If there's in any instance of any amount of fire, it's going to alert the occupants, whether or not they're asleep or whatnot. And so when we witness people that don't maintain their smoke detectors and CO detectors properly, it's extremely troubling to us. And it's one of the responsibilities of the Fire Prevention Bureau, is to investigate homes to make sure that they're following the code and for the safety of all the occupants, the residents. And so we're very fortunate that they've changed some technology. You may have heard of the 10-year sealed battery detectors now. So that eliminates an ongoing long-term problem which we've had, where people they would get annoyed by the intermittent beep going on, just identifying a low battery alarm. So they would just take the battery out or disconnect their smoke detector. And there have been fatalities that have happened that would have been prevented if the smoke detectors were active and were working properly. So the 10-year sealed battery is one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best advances in technology, because now we have a battery that cannot be touched, cannot be disconnected, and it is guaranteed to provide a signaling device for 10 years.
And if I can add to that for 1 minute, I know, Rick, you've been at this for a long time, and myself, we've been at it for a long time as well. I know 24 years ago, when I first started in fire prevention, this was one of the worst times of the year for us when we would go out and do the house inspections, because it was just after Christmas. And what do the majority of children get for Christmas? Toys. A lot of toys require batteries. We would go do an inspection in a house. You'd go poke the detector, nothing. Go up, take down the detector, take a look, battery would be gone. So this, with the 10-year sealed batteries now, prevents anybody from taking batteries out of the devices. So it ensures that that device is going to work in the event if you have a fire that night or during the day.
But it's astounding to me, because when I go to fires, as we do the displaced family report for the district chiefs, and we may have a fire on the first level, second floor, third family, whatever it may be, some smoke damage. But when they do the inspection, the building inspector goes up to check the fire alarms, there's no batteries in them, or they're taken off the wall. It's astounding to me. Why would you even do that?
Right.
And I think the other thing that I always run across is displaced families who don't have rental insurance. It's not the landlord's responsibility. It's your responsibility for your apartment to have rental insurance. And 3/4 of the people that I deal with don't have insurance. So good idea to get rental insurance.
Right.
And it's really not that expensive.
It's not that expensive.
I know when I
cheap
rented
money.
for years, I had rental insurance, and if you package it with your car insurance,
Yeah, it's
I want to say I think the policy cost me something like $89 or $90 a year.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
Right. And Chief, as far as you were saying with the detectives, although we do provide that service, really we'd like everyone to take some responsibility and understanding. If you're the tenant, just remember that this is a life-saving device for you.
certainly is.
So you really can't rely on just your landlord. Of course, they're ultimately responsible, but also it's your safety. So we'd like to encourage people to, particularly around October is Fire Prevention Week, and that's the time when we emphasize the need to test your batteries if you have an older-fashioned smoke detector with a battery, or just test your smoke detectors. And the other thing is, don't take it lightly. If there's an activation within a 3-tenement house, there's something that was generally the cause of this activation. So, I mean, it could be dinner time and someone, burnt dinner or something, or it could be something smoldering someplace in the basement, in the attic. So, the fire department is on 24/7, every day of the year, and we're there to protect the public. So whether or not you may think it's insignificant for a response to call the fire department, dial 911, notify a dispatcher, and have us inspect and investigate the cause of the alarm activation, so we can make sure that it's cleared, it's safe. Hopefully, in most cases, it is minor, but there are some cases, particularly a horrific fire we had last winter in January. It was there was a small fire that was identified, and it appears that it may not have been taken as seriously as it needed to be, and it resulted in a huge loss.
Isn't there a program, Inspector Medeiros, people over 65 can get smoke detectors, CO detectors?
Yes, that's a program that has existed in the city for years now through the Senior Safe program. Anybody who's 65 or older, we can provide battery-operated smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. It's been a great program. It started roughly, I want to say, around 2000, 2001. And through the years now, within the city of Fall River, we've installed over 3,000 devices. And if anybody needs that type of a service, they can contact Inspector Clayton Walker at 508-324-2740, extension 5112. And he'll be more than happy to help you with that. That's like one of the services we do in the city. That is a great thing. Another one of the things that we do is we also do the inspections of the houses, which I think is a great thing, because the more properties we can get into in the city, as we do each inspection and we leave that inspection there, issued a certificate, or we leave after a complaint, that house is up to code, meaning everything that should be there is there and it's working, which I think is a great thing, along with the installation of the detectors, because with that, those homes are much safer. And God forbid, in the event if there is a fire, those people have the best chance of evacuating that property, because with smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, like the chief was saying earlier, that's pretty much the first line of defense. And when you look statistically at houses that do not have a working fire alarm system as compared to a house that does, the figures of injuries and deaths is astronomically lower by having a working system. So I just think it's great that we're able to still provide that program to the citizens in the city.
So you can't buy or sell a home without that
certificate. Yeah, in Massachusetts, it's part of the law that if you're going to sell a house, that you obtain a certificate of compliance from the fire department. And what that entails is, if we go to a house, let's say it's a multifamily, we need to get inside each apartment to inspect to make sure that smoke detectors, what should be there, is there and working, as well as carbon monoxide detectors, and then the hallway system as well.
Now, doesn't the Red Cross do that as well, install smoke detectors and CO detectors? Is that a, I don't want to put my foot in my mouth now.
Okay.
Is that a conflict with the fire department?
Not at all.
Okay.
Through the years, we have actually partnered up with the Red Cross. They do have a program, and I think the way that they do business for a smaller community, it's a great thing. But I think in a city, if they can partner up with the fire department, like we did years ago, was fantastic, because they ended up having the resources where our program was 65 and older. When we were able to partner up with the Red Cross, that restriction of age was deleted with everything that they gave us. So it expanded our program even that much more, which was fantastic. I know on those years, let's say on average, we install like 60 to 100 devices. We were installing anywhere between 100 to 200 devices. So it was really great when they had that program.
We have a lot of times we have to do a third show sometime. But I just want to skip over a few things. And hearing impaired, okay? Speaking personally, my grandson, Lucas, is deaf. He's going for cochlear implants. And hearing impaired, what do we do to to make sure they're safe in Fall River and sight-impaired people?
Okay, through the years, what we've been able to do, we partnered up with the Commission of the Deaf from Boston, and they had some funding that we were able to access systems. They have different systems for those that are hearing impaired and or sight impaired, where they actually have different devices. There's one, it's a control unit that actually looks almost like, you remember the old radio alarm clocks back in the early 70s that you'd have on the side of the bed? There was a radio in an alarm clock.
Well, you are old, Jeff.
I know, so are you. I think we all are, right? At this point. But they looked actually like the old clock radio. And what you would do is you would plug in a wire which would then go to a pad. That pad you would place underneath your fitted sheet or your mattress, and then you would have to program the device. You would then activate your fire alarm and then hit set on this unit. And once everything was programmed in, what would happen is if that smoke detector went off, even though you couldn't hear it, the pad that you would put underneath your mattress was a vibrating pad, and it was strong enough that it would wake you up. So it was really fantastic that we could provide and connect with the Department of the Deaf, because if you look at what that equipment would cost the individual, it was anywhere between $800 to $1,000. And we've done that multiple times. We've been very fortunate.
And I think sight-impaired people as well, how do we handle that situation?
It would be
the same way.
It would be the same.
So when I do evacuation plans for nursing homes, daycare centers, etc., one of the things on my form, I ask any disabled people, sight impaired, walking impaired, hearing impaired, so forth, and they send that back to me with the evacuation plan. I think I've given Chief Sevigny a list as well. So we know if we have to go to, let's say, Commodore Towers,
right,
4th floor, apartment 401, whatever it may be, that person is sight impaired. So we'll know to go to that apartment right away to rescue that person out.
right.
So on that same vein, the question that comes up all the time in my evacuation plans: if the fire alarm goes off on one particular floor, there's no sign of smoke or fire, we hear that all the time, I always get asked, should we evacuate the building or should we shelter in place? And that's a question. It's how do you answer that properly, because you could say, well, shelter in place, but there's a fire, they got to get out. So what's the best advice that we could give people? And it's one of those 50-50 shaded gray areas.
Well, it's a great question, and it's one that it doesn't have the absolute correct answer to it. However, what I would say is, from my experience, what we want to see is people evacuate. We need people out of the building. If possible, if they can, that's what they should do, unless they're in a position of immediate danger where trying to evacuate would cause them to be their safety to be jeopardized. However, there's also a significant amount of people in some of these high-rises that don't have the ability, whether or not it's a walker, a wheelchair, or any other type of handicap that's obstructing their means of egress as far as delay. So, if possible, we would prefer people to evacuate. However, we understand that there won't be all cases, and that's why we'll have a significant manpower response immediately to a high-rise, because we understand the large occupancy within that building and the potential for the danger that's presented to them. So most buildings like that, however, are also constructed with non-combustible fire-resistant materials. So protection in place typically gives someone a safe amount of time. When you're considering what our response is, we should be on the scene within 4 minutes, then take immediate action. And so a protection in place, a shelter in place policy is not a bad thing. However, it's also something we want to be cognizant of, where, as you've identified for us, you've shared that with us, that information is so crucial that we share that amongst our incident commanders, so that they're aware of someone in a wheelchair with a handicap that is unable to evacuate themselves. So it's absolutely something that's extremely important. I know we've discussed the idea of which stairway
to go down.
And unfortunately, I don't think, when we do a pre-plan of a building, whether or not it's a residential area or a high hazard area, hospital or high rise, we are fluid because the situation may never be the same. So we could plan for one specific instance. However, if we have that vision and we're going to put the first pump here, this pump, we always have to be ready for other challenges that may come our way. Whether or not it's an apparatus is out at a vehicle accident someplace else, or whether or not there's, so to identify and have everyone go to one staircase, which may be our main means of fire attack, or smoke evacuation, or ventilation for the building. So instead of just blindly saying, hey, listen, we want everybody here, when the other stairway may have been, the right stairway, which would have been the most effective means of egress for the occupants. And well, everyone said to go to this stairway. Well, that's something that really needs to be a judgment call.
And I think we learned a lot from 9/11 when firefighters were going in and some people were sheltering in place, and when the building was on fire, I mean, you have to evacuate the building. You don't shelter in place because there's no way that you're going to survive the smoke or the heat. Right. And I think everyone in the fire service learned a lot from that experience as well. The other thing that I always get is elevators. And I know when we go to a high-rise, the elevator is accommodated by the fire department to access the floor up and down. People should not use the elevators. Don't even attempt the elevators. And that's why the question came up with me doing these evacuation plans, particularly from the building managers. Well, if the firemen are going up, they always say firemen, the firemen are going up one stairway and the people are coming down the other, how are we going to decipher where to go? I mean, that's another question, is a gray area, because you can have a situation in this stairway, that one's clear, or that one's a situation and that one's clear. So it becomes a very complicated
hopefully
scenario.
When you look at a high-rise, there are so many different safety features placed into the high-rises. You have your sprinkler system, because any high-rise is required to be sprinkled. Then through the construction, like you were speaking of earlier, Chief, you have the non-combustible materials. You have compartmentalization of that building with fire doors. So obviously, the construction method is in such a way that with the sprinkler system, you're going to isolate and contain that fire to one specific area. And within a 3 to 4 minute response, we're going to be on scene there. The reason that you don't want the public in the elevator is because the elevator shaft itself acts almost like a chimney.
Right.
So if there happens to be a fire within that elevator lobby area, it's going to act as a chimney and suck up all that smoke. And obviously, unless you're wearing an SCBA or mask that's going to provide fresh air, you're going to be subject to the smoke, and which is not a good thing. So that's the reason we don't want you in the elevator shaft.
Just like if you have a fire in a dumpster and the smoke goes through the shaft, throughout all the vents in the apartments, that's another precarious situation.
Yes, yes.
So, I think Chief Sevigny and Inspector Medeiros, we're going to have to do this again, because I have a bunch of questions that I still have for the public that we can share with them. But I thank you for being on the show and for your knowledge, and will you come back again?
We will.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you for having us.
We'll plan another show.
Sounds good.
Thanks for watching Our View on Public Safety.